you definitely need someone who understands the medicine and dealing with this type of case.
How do you know if your injury is a traumatic brain injury, and when do you need to get a lawyer involved? Well, that's what we're going to find out right now as we Ask the Lawyer. Hi again, everybody. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com. My guest is Kentucky attorney Tad Thomas, who's had a lot of experience helping people who have been injured with traumatic brain injuries. I want to remind you that if you want to ask questions about your specific situation, you can go to AskTheLawyers.com, click the button at the top of the page that says Ask a Lawyer, and it'll walk you right through the very easy process right there. Tad, good to see you again. As always, thank you for helping us out and answering our questions.
Happy to be here, Rob. Thank you.
So let's just talk about brain injuries in general. How common are they in the United States?
They're actually very common. Sadly, the CDC has estimated that over 5 million people are currently living with a permanent brain injury. Over 1 million people suffer some sort of traumatic brain injury every year. About 50,000 people die from brain injury each year. So it's a pretty prevalent issue. And it happens that motor vehicle collisions are actually the leading cause of traumatic brain injury.
Now, when you talk about traumatic brain injury or brain injuries in general, it's a spectrum, right? It covers a wide area. Touch on that a little bit for us. Everything from, I'm guessing, a bump on the head to something much more catastrophic. Tell us about that a little bit.
Yeah, absolutely. You have, unfortunately, catastrophic injuries where someone loses the ability to care for themselves and feed themselves and communicate without the assistance of devices. Where they may be in a persistent vegetative state, all the way down to, a minor transient brain injury where you have a concussion for a short period of time. So there's a wide variety. There's different testing out there to kind of gauge what that level is. Some brain injuries can be severe, though, and not show up on a CT scan or an MRI scan. So the more severe they become, the more obvious they are on the different radiological testing.
You mentioned that automobile accidents are the number one. What are some other ways that could cause brain injuries, especially that might be there might be legalities involved?
Sure. When it comes to, obviously you get them in sports and things like that, where there's, no cause of action for that kind of injury. But, premises liability cases, drownings, if you suffocate while you're in the process of drowning and your brain loses oxygen, that's a brain injury. Construction accidents, all sorts of, tractor trailer collisions, motorcycle collisions, even a motorcycle collision where you're actually wearing a helmet, you can still have a very serious traumatic brain injury.
What about trip and falls? It would seem to me a lot of times people may hit their heads when they fall. Is that a pretty common thing?
Yeah, actually, I had a client who slipped and fell on ice, coming out of a store. And unfortunately, she suffered a pretty severe brain injury because of how she fell, unfortunately. So you do see it quite a bit. We've seen it in premises liability cases, things falling, in a store like a Lowe's or a Home Depot, where something's falling off of a high shelf. You can see brain injuries in cases like that as well.
And how does someone know, Tad? How do they decide, okay, my brain injury is such that I need to get an attorney involved like yourself?
The only way you know is by calling an attorney. And any attorney that works in this field should work on a contingent fee basis. And any attorney working in this field should, first of all, give a free consultation. So it shouldn't cost you anything to call, tell them the facts of your case, and ask an attorney, do you have a case? And if it's an attorney who's worth their while, they're going to give you the time of day. They're going to listen to your story or have one of their staff listen to your story and then tell you whether or not it's something worth pursuing.
It occurs to me, too, that, and this may be a whole other interview, but that there could be times that people have a brain injury, and especially the person who's injured may not realize it. Some of the examples you mentioned, like something falling and hitting you on the head, or you fall down and hit your head, just, oh, I've got a headache, or, I've got a bump, that it could be much more serious than they realize. Do you find that to be the case?
It actually happens more often than you'd think, Rob. What'll happen is you'll have some sort of an injury, whether a motor vehicle collision or a slip and fall, things like that, and the client will go in to the hospital and have a scan like a CT or an MRI, and the doctor will say, "Hey, we don't see anything here. You may have suffered a mild concussion or a mild TBI." Well, a mild TBI is still a brain injury, and a lot of times you'll see the families will be the first ones to notice that there's a problem. You know, you'll see changes in personality. They'll become more aggressive. Sadly, I had a client once upon a time that, was a dog person, loved his dog, and then suffered a TBI as a result of of a collision, and like would kick the dog that was his favorite. And it just had a total overnight change in personality. You couldn't tell from the scans, but clearly he had a brain injury.
And obviously, the person injured couldn't say, "Oh, my personality's completely changed." That's got to make it a little more difficult for someone who's trying to represent them in a case when the person injured can't really tell you that they're injured.
That's right, and it comes down to the family. It's a tremendous burden on the family to have to care for someone with a brain injury, to deal with someone that they've loved that becomes essentially a different person as a result of those injuries. And we have to be understanding. We may be talking to a client on the phone about their case, and they just go into a rage. And we as attorneys and counselors have to understand that that's not that person. That's not who that person is. This is an injury. It's almost like a disease, and so we have to be compassionate and caring and patient with our clients that have suffered this type of injury.
I would think that's why it's especially important to find an attorney who has experience with these kind of things, because without that experience, you might not know to even look for that.
Yeah, absolutely. You need, if you have a case involving someone that has a brain injury, you need to inquire of the attorney that you hire. Have they dealt with these kinds of cases before? How often? Do you know the medicine? Do you know the tests? Do you have the right experts that you can call to help the client with their situation? And many times we actually try to help our clients get treatment as well. There's a residential treatment facility here in Kentucky that we recommend oftentimes. So, you definitely need someone who understands the medicine and dealing with this type of case.
It's always informative whenever we talk, Tad. Thank you so much for answering our questions again.
Rob, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
That's going to do it for this episode of Ask the Lawyer. My guest has been Kentucky attorney Tad Thomas. Remember, if you want to ask questions about your specific situation, just head over to AskTheLawyers.com, hit the button at the top of the page that says Ask a Lawyer, and you can ask away right there. Thanks for watching. I'm Rob Rosenthal with AskTheLawyers.com.